Good afternoon, welcome everybody to FMA Discussion. This is episode 356 and our way to 400, whether I want to or not. But that's the way it seems it's going. At any rate, today we have Guru Anthony DiSarro on, and I'm kind of excited because we're covering more Cabales, and we're trying to make a concerted effort to get more folks on for that. And so I'm excited. He's kind of highly regarded, and we're going to see him talk about it, his teacher, Bruce, and other stuff, and see where this goes. He also has got some demos, which will be exciting. So without further ado, I'm going to be bringing him up.
Good afternoon.
Hey there. Again, thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm honored to be on and share whatever stories and information and insights I can. Like I've told you in private, I'm kind of small potatoes in the FMA world, so I keep a low profile, but I'm happy to answer any questions, especially in regards to Serrata eskrima that I practice.
I think you went about the smart way though, staying low key.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, it's all cracked up to be.
No, when the louder you are, the more you kind of invite a target on your back, unfortunately.
You do, whether you want it or not, whether you ask for it or not. I mean, you could be like, non-confrontational, really kind of low key, calm, collective. It won't matter.
Yeah.
It's funny. Burton, my teacher, Bert Richardson, goes, remember, Dean, they're always going to tackle the guy with the ball.
That's right.
So when he told me that, I'm like, man, that's tough to argue.
No, it's true. And frankly, Dean, it's interesting because I'm a Stockton-based Filipino martial arts practitioner on the East Coast. So, not to make a shot against the Stockton community, but there's a lot of bravado in the Stockton community, a lot of jockeying and hey man, I'm the top guy, out here, nobody knows who I am. And I'm a white dude. So like, I'm not Filipino, and that's very big in the Stockton community. Is like, are you Filipino practicing the Filipino martial arts, or are you an outsider? Especially back in the day when my teacher first started training.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Matter of fact, I mean, that had to be so much more prolific and evident back then during those times. Being a non-Filipino going to train. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's comparatively speaking to now. Wow.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot more opportunity in the FMA world as far as people of all races, ethnicities, backgrounds being able to train openly in FMA, really in all martial arts, to be honest.
True.
But the FMA community used to be very, it was the garage and backyard training, and it was mostly within families and within the community of Filipino people. And that's the one thing that's interesting that you could talk about Manong Angel is he was really recognized as the first Filipino to teach openly the Filipino martial arts in the country. That, as far as they know, he was the first that had an active Filipino martial arts club, and he started teaching people that were outside of the Filipino community.
Right? Yeah. I've heard similar. Yeah, which I mean, good. Back then, good on him. I mean, obviously, stepping outside those lines.
Yeah.
So I'm sure many have followed when they saw him doing it. I'm going to assume some followed.
Sure. I mean, the whole Stockton community, you had guys like Leo Jaron, Max Sarmiento, all the big heavy hitter kind of guys that are recognized names in the Stockton community. And Cabales is kind of like the center point because he was the one that was kind of at the forefront. And it's funny because you watch a lot of the different practitioners from those lineages, and you see a little bit of Cabales' stuff you see a little bit of Jaron's stuff, the Cuerdas, like you see each one of them had an influence because they all knew each other. So they were constantly stealing stuff from one another.
Yeah, right. No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, just a cross training among all of them that, there's no way stuff was borrowed.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and let's face it, I've said this to my students before, and I say it to a lot of martial arts events when I go to. The human body can only move so many ways.
Mm.
And stylistically, a lot of martial artists try to really differentiate themselves. Like, well, our system,
Yeah.
I hear that all the time. In our system, we do this. It's like, well, okay. So we're talking about stick fighting or bladed arts. You stab, thrust, or slash. So how many different ways are there to stab, thrust, and slash?
Mm-hmm.
What it comes down to really is the practice of your methodology of footwork, positioning, and timing.
Right. What is the vehicle getting you there? Yeah.
Right. And my teacher used to say something when it came to the Filipino martial arts community. He said the average old lady with an umbrella trying to hit you over the head will probably be more successful than most FMA guys because they're too busy trying to look stylistically flashy.
Yeah. As this lady's just like,
she just wants to hit you. So
exactly. Man, I just got knocked out. But that's all. Folks, if you're watching, tell us where you're watching from. Smash that like button. We have just got started. So what was interesting in the test run, which I personally found fascinating, is that at 11 years old, whether you knew it or liked it, or the magnitude or significance thereof, were exposed, PTK via Greg Alon's lineage at 11 years old. And then obviously there was a gap of time that you had, and you didn't get reacquainted again to subsequent years later. So obviously, I know that was a very young age and all that, but I guess let's segue into, I know you come from a traditional martial background. How did you get involved with Cabales?
So first off, I never trained with Cabales.
Okay.
Manong Angel,
the system rather. Okay.
Yeah. So with the Serrata system, when I had, so like going back that quick point, my exposure to Filipino martial arts happened at a very young age, but I had no idea what I was doing or who I was affiliated with. So Greg Allen, through Leo Gahe, I was doing Paquita Tertia. Just had no idea I was doing Paquita Tertia. I didn't even know what Paquita Tertia was because my teacher was calling it Kali Silat, and we'd come back and just do some basic stuff. And then when I started training in 94, 95 with Hachi Bruce Judnick, he was at a seminar and that I went to in, I think, 97 or 98, and he was doing Filipino martial arts. And I had seen some of the videotapes that he had on the Filipino arts, but I never picked him up. Okay. But at this one seminar, he started doing stick work. And I was like, wow, this is really cool stuff, and he was really good at it. I'm like, I thought he was just like this Kempo guy. Yeah. But his Filipino martial arts was phenomenal. So I said, Sensei, I'd really like to practice this too. And so he's like, all right, well, just start doing it, practice the drills. And so from there, I started working with Hachi and some of his senior people that were Filipino stylists under him, like a student, his Pat Kelly, who was like one of his senior students at the time, and just a really highly skilled FMA practitioner in his own right, with a background as well in through Tony Samara and Haron, and trained under Guru Dan and Rick Fay in the Inasano blend, the Inasano Lacosta blend. So Pat was really, really skilled. And also with one of his senior students named George Santana, who left the organization many years ago. But I did Filipino arts with him as well. So my introduction to Serrata came through Hachi. So the flavor of Cabales Serrata scream that I do is through Hachi Judnick. And just to give a real quick background on who he is, because some people in the FMA community some know who he is, some don't. Hachi met Cabales in 1973 through Guru Dan, actually. Hachi was a good friend with Guru Dan's first cousin, Pask. And so Pask and him went down to Stockton because he said, hey, my cousin Danny said we should go, meet with this guy, Angel. He teaches Eskrima. And so he went. And Hachi loved it and started training with Cabales in late 1973. And Cabales had told him, I told you this the other night, take it for what it's worth, but Cabales told Hachi, he's like, you're my first white student. the first white guy to do FMA with him. Everybody else at the time was either Filipino, and I think there may have been one or two African Americans that were training with him as well. But Hanshi was the first white dude. And so he trained with Cabales through the 70s and had met, and it was old school training back then. They it was the first generation of students. So he worked a lot with Cabales, but he also worked a lot with Dentoy Revelar, who most people will say he was really like Cabales' top person, and he was really, really skilled. So Hanshi worked a lot with him. He met people like Max Sarmiento, Leo Jaron. And so he worked with a lot of the guys in Stockton at the time. And so the flavor of Cabales Serrata that I got from Hanshi comes from that era of training, the stuff that he got, combined with his background already in many other martial arts and the principles and philosophies that he teaches within his own system.
Wow. Just, it's funny. I wasn't made aware of him until the symposium last year. And then when I started talking to him, I'm like, holy crap, man. Like, how's this guy off their radar? Like, I'm thinking from an interview perspective of all the people I covered. I'm like, how is this guy not on the radar? And but it looks like we're going to get him on, which I really hope he does, because not only in reference to what you're talking about as far as his Cabales journey, but there is also significant with Remy Presses.
Oh yeah.
I
mean, then he met Remy. He met Remy in the mid to late 70s.
Yeah.
And I'll let him tell the longer version of the story. But long story short, he met Remy through a man named Rick Alamany, who is also a Kempo guy on the West Coast. And Remy Remy said to Hanshi in his accent, "So you do Filipino martial arts?" And Hachi's like, "Yeah, I do a little bit." And he goes, "You show me." So Hachi proceeded to show Remy everything he did in Serrata Eskrima, And of course, Remy's, using strategies, watching this stupid white guy show him everything he knows. And of course, my teacher says to Remy, "So you want to play?" And everybody in the FMA community, especially in those times, knows when you say, "Do you want to play?" It's not playing. They're challenging you to fight. So he goes, Hanshi said, "You want to play?" And Remy looked at him and pushed his glasses up by the brim and goes, "Sure," and proceeded to kick the hell out of Hanshi. And that's when Hanshi became a student of Remy's. And so Hanshi was responsible. He stuck with Remy for a while, and he was really the guy who got Remy out traveling to teach seminars in the U.S.
Yeah.
They went to the Midwest a lot in Chicago. They went to Colorado and the Denver area. And so a lot of schools that do Prez's method Arnis in the Denver, Colorado area, Chicago, they've been to Texas. Those guys met Remy because Hanshi was the one that kind of got them out on the road.
It's incredible, man. Yeah, wow. He's got we got to get him on. I mean, he needs to be heard from. So when you're coming from a traditional background and you're starting to do this weapon stuff, like what was your initial, I guess, insight or revelation, or like what stood out, like, coming from this traditional background and now you're doing this completely different system and from a different country style? Like, what resonated, what captivated you?
I mean, as you know, like the Filipino martial arts are very dynamic and they're very intense and fast and it was very appealing to me to get involved in something like because I'd studied other weapons and not in a really good lineage, but I played around with the bow staff and sai and traditional like Japanese or Okinawan weapons. But when I watched the Filipino martial arts, it just appealed to me a lot more. And I practiced Japanese sword for many years too. I did Asian Rui Jitsu for, close to a decade. But I had a falling out with my teacher and just kind of lost the taste for swordsmanship. Still respect it tremendously, but I don't practice it actively anymore. But the Filipino arts always kind of really stuck with me as something that I really appreciated. And they carry over really well and complement almost any other art that you study, especially if it's an empty hand striking art, you know. The body dynamics, the footwork, you know, I would tell people when I practice, I say, you know, the difference between training a weapon-based art and an empty hand art is you measure the success and failure by millimeters as opposed to by inches, right? So if you're off by a millimeter with a blade, you're dead. If you're off by a millimeter with a punch, it doesn't matter. You know, you could be off an inch or two and get grazed by a punch, but you get nicked by the edge of the sword, you're toast. So training a weapon-based art like a Filipino martial art that focuses on impact and bladed weapons, where you're dealing with that distancing and timing and the strategies of pinpoint accuracy with your weapon, really carries over into the empty hand arts in a way that makes your skill level really rise to another level in the empty hand arts.
I totally agree. I think there's an absolute correlation to make your empty hands more acute. You know what I mean? Defensively, perception and reaction. I mean, if you're dealing with, you know, if you train 4-inch knife, for instance, or just knife period, you know, and you get pretty good at perception and reaction like that. Now, when the empty hands come, it's going to make sense that, you know, you're going to be more acute in that area. You know, I think so anyhow, and I've seen evidence of that. You know.
Yep, and I think that obviously you're dealing with different mentality when you're doing weapon-based as opposed to empty hand, but the body dynamics need to be consistent. And one of the things that I see, and you'll see a little bit more, I'll talk a little bit about it when I demo how we do our Serrata, is the pressure of maintaining a consistent forward energy into your opponent so that you don't backpedal or get yourself in an imbalanced position. And a lot of FMA people, they'll work range, but I'll watch a lot of players and they'll move, but they don't really give that kind of energy or pressure when they make contact with their opponent. So they're really disrupting their base. And I think that's really important, because when it comes to weapons, if your opponent has a split second where their footing or posture, positioning, and stability is better than yours, you're screwed. So, you know, you need to be able to take advantage of disrupting their balance and their position. Yeah.
Wow. Well said. So, so you're training there, where, just, you know, for folks who maybe just don't know much about Cabales Serrada, I mean, what can you tell as far as, you know, what makes it unique, or, you know, maybe perhaps not unique, but like where it's recognizable from a person, or what stands out, whether it be the range, the overall methodology, you know, what can you tell us?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, most people recognize Serrata as a and it means like close in or close in fighting system. So it's more like a corto and medio corto system, but there's still largo in the Serrata system, because, you know, like fighting doesn't start here.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
it starts out here and then moves in. So you need to be well versed in all the ranges to be able to work effectively as a combatant. But Serrata really does. I think that the thing that Serrata, where it stands out from some other FMA systems, is it's a close-in system. It's very fast, so the speed and intensity of Serrata is recognizable. You know, other arts like Balentawak is also very, very fast. And Serrata is of the same regional martial art, right? So Cabales trained with a practitioner named DiSarro, and when he came to the U.S., Cabales kind of incorporated some of his own stuff, but was influenced primarily by what he learned from DiSarro. So I can't speak for how he taught through the years, because as much as I've met some of the other practitioners who came to Cabales after my teacher did, you can still see that the fundamentals are all the same.
Okay.
You know, the emphasis might be different. And of course, we've had this conversation before. Every group that's affiliated through the Serrata group will have some infighting about how they're the ones that got the real stuff and the other guys didn't, or we do real Serrata and you don't do real Serrata. And well, you know, and the irony of that, Dean, is that what people can't recognize, what students need to really kind of see as practitioners, is that our teachers are human beings. And a lot of times when they're pissed off, they're going to badmouth one of the other students to the other students just because they're pissed off at the time. So if my teacher's upset with me and he says to another student of his who's also representative and senior student of his, you know, Tony really is pissing me off and blah, blah, blah. When he dies, those people, if there's a split, they're like, well, you know, Hachi never really liked Tony.
Yeah.
And he didn't really teach him the secrets. So that's what you get, is you get guys constantly jockeying for position because at one time they had a relationship with Manong Angel and they may have had a couple of, you know, cognacs, and maybe Manong got a little pissed off and was like, you know, that guy, I never really showed him anything. Where in reality, he did show that person something. It's just that now he's pissed off. So I mean, a good example, without naming an individual, and you'll know right away who I'm talking about, but a prominent FMA person who's a Grand Tuhan, how many people has he disowned and said they are no longer ranked or recognized at all within his system? But they've gone through the whole system, were given rank, are very skilled, are recognized as
It's like you're banished. You know, he no longer will be teaching.
Right. So I mean, so when people start getting into these cockfights about how they were the ones who have the real system, it's ridiculous, because rather than doing that, you should go to that other person and go, hey man, what did Manong teach you? What did Manong Angel work on with you? Did you get something different than what I got? And then you're getting a full appreciation for what the art was. You know, and Hachi, well, and the thing that I like about Hachi is that he kind of stepped away from the whole being a Cabales Serrata guy. So no one really even talked to him. And a lot of these like generations that came after Hachi, they don't even know who he is. Some of them, you know, they don't even know who Bruce Judnick is or that he trained with Cabales.
Yeah, I didn't.
Right. So, and I'm sure a lot of them are puffing their chest out and going, well, he couldn't have learned anything from Manong Angel. But it's ridiculous, you know. And, you know, and I'm not the only person that trains under Hachi Bruce. On the East Coast, there's me, right, in New York, upstate New York. My student, Nate Marinone, who's in Connecticut, really, Nate's very, very skilled. He keeps me on my toes, and he'll be here shortly to demo with me. So I'm waiting for him to show up. Ryan Chamberlain is in Maine. Ryan is a senior student of Hachi's, not just in Serrata Eskrima, but he also is a top level Kosharu teacher under Hachi in Maine. Okay. So and then you've got John Moore in Colorado. So we're like the three primary people, and then his student John Ludwig in Chicago. And John is also a very well-versed martial artist. So there's not a huge group of people that represent Serrata Eskrima under Hachi. But our method of Serrata, the signature that you see is that everything is very refined and tight, and he has us do very small motion, and so it's very pinpointed, kind of like with almost a fencer's mindset rather than just the impact weapon mindset. So that's what you see from what we do.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, fascinating. Wow. Yeah. I mean, hopefully, you know, by conclusion of the show, when folks watch it, I mean, hopefully there'll be an interest in the growth as far as your particular faction. You know what I mean? That's happened before with these shows. You know, people find out and they're like, you know, particularly when you guys are really also being on the non-political end and stuff like that. Folks might appreciate that. Now, weapon. So is the 24-inch, is that what's generally used, or
Yeah, so Cabales taught with a shorter stick, but that's
okay,
not all he used.
okay,
And I tend to use a 26 or 28-inch stick.
okay,
And my reason for that is that if you can learn to manipulate the weapon at that length, and you can, because it forces you, some of the tighter movement, it really forces you to use your body dynamics to manipulate the weapon so you're not getting caught up at the
okay,
closer range. So if you can get good with a 26 or 28-inch stick and deliver the kind of power that you want,
yeah,
when you go to the shorter stick, it's much faster and a lot easier to utilize.
okay,
But again, Serrata is a close range system, so the stick is generally smaller because it's supposed to represent like a bolo or a shorter edged weapon. And
okay,
Serrata really isn't a Spadidaga based Eskrima system, so it is stick and dagger or blades, long blade and short blade mentality. But they teach within Serrata, so we teach single stick, stick and dagger, double stick, and empty hand is what
those are
we
your
do.
kind of like your four modules, so to speak.
Right.
Okay, okay. Wow. So the stick and dagger. Okay, because I don't want to, 'cause I don't know what you had planned for the demo and all that. We're gonna get to that soon, but it seems like the lock and block is like a
hmm
critical development drill slash, but it just seems really important. Is
Yeah.
that
So like I think the three big drills that Cabales worked on was lock and block, right? Then he called flow sparring, or what a lot of people look at is called sombrata, right?
okay?
And then the picking drill. And the picking drill is based.
Uh-oh. He temporarily froze, which is usually a
Sombrata and picking. And picking was usually more senior and more advanced practitioners were learning that because it were more advanced principles, But picking literally is just another word for faint attacks,
picking. Oh, you're fainting. Okay. All right. Okay.
Right.
Okay. All right. You froze there for a second, but you came back. So it must have been just a glitch.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, no, no,
I
no worries.
noticed that happened a little bit the other night
Yeah,
too.
you're back. Definitely. Don't worry. This is definitely not. This is not the first time. So those three things. So your lock and block.
Yep.
Your free flow, or kind of like off sombrata, and
Yep.
then you're picking.
Yep.
Am I correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So lock and block was lock and block is just basically a multi-feed counter for counter drill. So,
Okay.
you'll have one person who's feeding multiple strikes, and the practitioner will go through a defense for that particular strike to a finishing closing move. And so
Okay.
like the lock and block, like the closing when you lock, it's
Yeah.
just that's basically just a prepared position for what might come next.
What might come
So a lot of
next?
times
Okay.
you'll see people demonstrate a technique in Serrata, and they'll be like, person attach, parry, hit, strike, counter, lock. The lock is just the ready position for whatever next move is coming.
You're locked out. I got you. Okay. Right.
So,
Okay. No,
so a lot of
it
people
was
hear lock and
interesting.
block and they think it's like joint locking or you're
No,
locking
no,
up
yeah,
your
no,
body.
no, right, no. I get what you're saying. Like
Yeah.
you're ready. You're locked down in position to anticipate or what's coming next. Like, because when the multi-stocking guys came out, that's one of the areas they focused on. Generally speaking, far as the feeder, the receiver, and the spatial aspect. Do you guys move around, or is there a progression where they stay still for the time being and then
Yes,
there's movement? Okay.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, because,
Okay.
footwork is essential, right? Movement is life. So you can't stand in one spot and just practice without moving. But you have to teach the fundamental movements first. So you teach at a base level where people are at a specific range,
Okay.
and then you start teaching them to move more and more and more.
Okay.
So it becomes like sparring, and we do sparring, but it's the focus is on working on the application of the movements that you're learning. Because a lot of times what happens is people will spar, and they spar, but they break away from what it is they do in their system. They just end up bashing each other with sticks.
No, they just resort to primal.
Yeah, so that's the thing that I look for is that, and my teacher would always say, if you spar, are you sparring your art, or are you just going back to like what you said, Dean, into like a primal attack and defend? So if you don't have a strong base in your footwork and your body positioning and how you deliver your strikes, and you can't spar with that type of methodology, then you're not representing your art when you're fighting it. You're doing a reenactment. And I think a lot of Serrata players, and I'm not speaking for every system because I don't know, and I don't know what their methodology of teaching is, but a lot of Serrata players go through the moves. They'll feed a one and the person will do outside movement, and then you send a Serrata player to like a Dog Brothers camp, and they fight and they look no different. They don't stand out as like, oh, that you could tell that guy's a Serrata player. So it's like, so I think that having people like that have trained with Manong Angel, and you can see all the, like, I'll watch people like Ron Saturno, Manong Ron, who's incredibly fast, and he emphasizes that speed and the fighting spirit within Cabales Serrata. At Guru Carlito, who's Carlito Bonjak, who just the way he teaches Manong Angel's art is far different from anybody else that I've ever met. He's got a very distinct way of presenting and teaching Manong Angel's art, and it helps to meet people like that and work and pick their brain, because you get insights into how the art should be practiced, not just from a box mindset or a linear mindset, but being able to look out. And that's what I appreciate about my teachers. You have to be able to fight the art. You can't just do a reenactment,
Yeah. It's I tell you, but Nick Merchant, he takes it, and he's
Nick spars.
I went to beat the crap out of cancer with him, and he uses it. I mean, so
right.
There's nobody telling me, you can't do it or try. I mean, I've witnessed it, and wow. So how do with regards to your teaching, so I know you've been teaching this, it sounds like a couple decades, as far as your teaching and your relation to your students, what overall, like, what do you try to instill in them? And do you feel like, are you giving directly was given to you and you're handing to them? Do you put your own twist, flavor on it? What say you on that?
Yeah. So I think that as practitioners, the more we train, right, the longer we're doing an art, our own signatures and our body quirks and things that we do start to come through. But I try to teach what my teachers passed on to me as orthodox as possible. But the irony is my teacher's not an orthodox teacher. He's a conceptually and principally based martial artist. So he will look at me do something and he'll say, why are you still doing it that way? You should be going beyond that mindset now, and expanding the art. And I think that's the other problem we run into, Dean, with a lot of martial arts systems as a whole, not just the Filipino art systems, is people are trying to lock in so hard into what their teacher taught them without looking at the fact that movement has to adapt and change with the environment, with the times, with the different methodologies of combat. Like people aren't going to fight with sticks if they have a blade. People aren't going to fight with a blade if they have a firearm,
a gun.
right?
Yeah, it's overall evolution. You're absolutely right. I really appreciate people who hold to the integrity of the system and they pass it on as what they were given it to. Like I complete respect for that. You're taking what was given to you and you right to the T's dotted, I's dotted, T's crossed, you're heading to them.
Right.
But there's something to be said for looking at evolution or the times and all that. So I guess there's an argument for both. That's a tough fence. You know what I mean?
Sure. I mean, you want to maintain the integrity of the system, right? So where it came from, you want to respect the roots of where the system came from and pay homage to the seniors that came before you, which is why the art should still contain those signatures.
Yeah.
But everyone's going to look different doing it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you watch if you watch like Mike Yanay, who was one of Cabales' senior people. If you watch the lineage of his group, they do their Serrata just a little different than some of the other groups that do it, right? Okay. It's still Serrata. You can still see it's the same, but they have a different flavor because of the line that they came from.
Gotcha.
So someone who trained, when you watch Guru Carlito's people, the signature that they have is they're all very, very low to the ground. Now, why do you think that is?
Okay.
Why do you think they're so low to the ground?
Yeah.
Because when Guru Carlito's feeding his guys, he's in a wheelchair.
Exactly.
So he's low. So these guys have to really duck down. I remember one of the first lessons I had with Guru Carlito, he was just feed me like fast, right? And I was like, geez, I was getting so tired because I had to squat down like, a foot lower than I normally get.
Yeah.
Just so I wouldn't get hit by his stick. So that's a signature that you see from from Guru Carlito's group, right? Yeah. But it's always still the same art. So if I watch somebody do, and every Serrata guy will tell you, all they need to see is someone do outside movement for a number one, which is the basic first technique you learn in Cabales Serrata Eskrima, and you'll be able to recognize if that person has a foundation in Serrata.
Serrata. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. So where's the East Coast? I mean, obviously, heavily West Coast and all that. Like, do you think it'll grow on the East Coast? You think it'll, whether regardless of lineage or faction lineage? I mean, you think it'll grow?
I'd like to see it grow. It's a beautiful art. It's a practical art. It's fast, it's dynamic. There's enough senior people teaching in the world, well, in our country, doing Serrata, that there's tons of people to reference to be able to get the art from. We talked about this. The East Coast, the four big FMA arts out here were Doce Paris, Modern Arnis, Bikini Tertia, and
Asano blend, I would say.
And in Asano blend because of the people that came out here from Guru Dan. So those are the four systems that were prevalent. So when you start seeing, and the funny thing is Inasato blend has Stockton-based martial arts.
Right, as well as PTK.
So Guru Dan is probably the most, he's like an encyclopedia. He's got senior level knowledge in Serrata Eskrima.
It's crazy.
In her own Eskrima, in Johnny Lacosta's system.
It's crazy.
But only a select few of his people really delved deep within those
specific areas. Yeah.
So
I know it's true. Like, the East Coast. It's like you're so right. There's some arts that really flourished, really developed, spread out. I mean, really, and then like I look at Cabales, I look at KI, I look at Lamego, and it's like, you know what I mean? It's just
right.
And I don't know. I think if I had to guess, it's just I think it's just geographics.
Sure.
I mean,
absolutely.
I don't think it's like, oh no, because we don't like that. No, it's just because there were no reps, and it just didn't get spread, unfortunately. You know what I mean? Hopefully that'll change, though. I just think it'd be just better for everybody, And
absolutely.
That's one of the things on this channel I try to do is, try to where folks can spread their art by via reps or just get it. And like, but between like Nick is really, obviously you are upstate, so hopefully among all you guys.
Yeah, well, again, so you have on the East Coast, the people that I know of.
Yeah.
So Nick's in the New York City metro area.
Correct.
I'm in upstate New York.
Yeah.
You got Nathan Marinone, who's in Connecticut.
Yeah, right here.
You've got Ryan Chamberlain, who's in Maine, near Winthrop, Maine. And I know I'm missing people, you know.
Could be. So actually, maybe the Northeast is not that bad. Maybe it's basically mid-Atlantic South that really needs.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and again, there might be people from
There
other
could
factions.
be, right. There very well could be folks.
You know.
Yeah.
So like I made the comment about, we talked the other night, the Bahalani guys came out here and for a while when Chris LaCava was living here, he was training with them. So he was doing their methodology of the art in Connecticut, but now he's in South Carolina. So so people move, you know, and that's, I mean, look at Bobby Tabota of Balentawak. He was he lived in Australia or New Zealand originally, right?
Right. I think you're right. Yeah.
And then he moved to the US. Right. So imagine if he never moved to the US.
I know, right? I mean,
there's a whole faction of people who study Balentawak that never would have had that meeting.
That's true.
And may have never even trained Balentawak.
That's very true. Yeah.
So it's like, if it wasn't for people like Guru Dan, Remy Prezes, Manong Angel, Leo Gahe, most people wouldn't know what the Filipino arts are.
Oh my God, those three. It's definitely those three. Those three, I mean.
Yeah, so Remy and Guru Dan, and I would say more Gahe because he was on the East Coast.
No, definitely Gahe. If you look at the East Coast, in other words, if you were to look at the late 70s, earlys, what Gahe did, like, I mean, look what came out of Gahe. Seance, Atienzas,
right?
Bill McGrath, Eric Naus, Tom Bizio. I mean, and then you know, Dog Brothers are, you could say, are significantly influenced all that.
Oh, sure.
From Gahe. I mean, so I always say that because I covered this in a couple of shows, because I just always was fascinated with that late 70s group for several reasons. But they were kind of the equivalent. I'm not saying nowhere on the scale for significance, but they were kind of the Stockton of our East. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a very correct statement. Because the FMA first was in Stockton. I mean, the West Coast is where Filipino martial arts was prevalent originally in this country. You know, Hawaii with people like Flora Villabrea, you know, and then when people came to the West Coast, you had the Cabales, the Sarmientos, the Hirons. Because Gahe wasn't on the East Coast till the early 70s.
Early 70s.
Late 60s, early 70s, but he wasn't really, but people weren't really training till the 70s.
No, right. And then he got in kind of a Taekwondo school, Bill McGrath, and it just kind of blew up from there. And all that. But yeah, absolutely. To your point, those three, as far as the U.S. is concerned, you know, I mean, obviously Bobby is the face now, I would say. Like,
sure.
If you were to pick one person, you know.
It's not hard for him to be the face when he's as skilled as he is.
Yeah, I mean, like,
and not just him, his people too. He produces produces really top level people. You got like Alex Ormaza. You know, there's guys that train with Grandmaster Bobby. When you watch them, they're phenomenally skilled in their own right. You know, a lot of times you'll see systems and like the senior guy is the guy, and his students are okay. But Grandmaster Bobby produces
his top people. No, his top guys are absolutely no argument, hands down. Yeah, I mean, things are not getting lost in translation there. Yes,
right.
Yeah, but if you're ready, because I know you got, we're gonna try to get you out left at 3. So if you're ready for demos, I'm ready.
Sure.
If you're ready. So
just, I don't know what if there's anything particular that what I'll probably do is I'll just show some of the fundamental things that we do, but also like the things that I find important to work as far as pressure and distancing and positioning and refinement and movement to deal with a person. So
perfect.
So we'll cover that. I just got to move the camera a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. And again, I'm going to give you the bigger screen too. So
yes, so
you'll be good.
Let's see. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Make sure I'm not
missing. All right, so I've got Nate Marinone, who's been training with me for quite a few years now, and he's going to be my demo assistant.
All right.
Nate is a exceptionally skilled Serrata practitioner in his own right, but also really skilled in the Villabrea system as well as the Inisano method. So, because he's through the Magda lineage, the Cos Magda lineage for JKD. So, so we've been working on Serrata for a while. All right, so I guess the first thing that we'll go over is the basic outside movement. So this is the signature thing, the signature movement that you see in most Serrata systems. The person will feed a number one strike, and we zone out and attack the striking limb first, reposition, check, hit, and then we go into our lock position. And so this is the dagger hand, so you'll see the extension as the thrust is happening here. And in Serrata, most of the attacks with the dagger hand were thrust. You didn't see a lot of slashing with the dagger hand. It was really a penetrating or thrusting weapon. So what we do, so this is the classic way that you'll see outside movement done, either from a defensive position, which is here, right? So you're really zoning out, pulling the shoulder out of the way, realigning, checking, hitting. Then you'll see the more offensive version work, where you come in direct to the person. So the difference is that, one, the person is moving away, two, the person is engaging more, right? So we refine the movement and make it a little smaller, and we attack right here. So now all I'm doing is, if he's trying to hit me, I'm not going to move, but that's where the hit goes. So we'll start at the head, then we'll move more to the shoulder, so it becomes a little more difficult. But that's the attack, right? So, and I see I have the forward pressure, so I'm not just kind of moving and placing the stick there, but I want to upset his balance at the same time. So once that attack comes, right, then all the other hits are right there. So I'll get that movement, disarm, and then finish up with whatever follow through we have. And we also tended to deal with attack and counterattack. So like if I feed Nate a 3-strike and he counters that, his next move is to be able to attack me low or finish up with a technique. So if he has this technique, that's what he's looking for. But if I feed him that 3, but then I check his arm, so now I'm attacking or countering his move on his first movement. So these are the most common strikes, the 1s, the 2s. The 3, as I'm coming here, gives me position to go out in that way. And because Serrata's in the spotty dagger arc, this move, well, that's the thrust is happening right away. So I'm not just going 3 and then thrust. I'm drawing his attack to get the thrust right away. Then he's going to counter, and so I have to be able to move right away and continue moving. So there's no stopping of the movement, but you practice the basics where he'll attack, I'll do a move, he'll attack, I'll do a move, I'll attack, he'll do a move. So we're static right now, so we learn to do the basic moves. But eventually, there's a big back and forth. So I'm not just feeding here, but I'm actually changing my attack, so that's where a pick would come in, right? He'll see that from here, but that's where the actual strike's going. So if he picks it up, right, then I have to be able to counter that move right away and follow my own, counter for his move. So it's a constant back and forth. So if we started at a bigger distance, right? So we'll start out here, and then as you attack, see that's where the moves start to come into the Serrata or closer range, because this is where the fight starts, right out here. So we're gauging our distance. Nobody starts here, right? But this is what we do when we're learning the art, right? And so Nate didn't want to do this, but I'm going to make him do it. The lock and block from Serrata is a multi-feed. So I'll demo a little bit of this with him so you can see. We'll go slow, but I'll start with the feed, Let him finish. Feed again. Feed again. Feed again. Feed again. So it's a constant back and forth. So you see how it speeds up and I change the intensity of the attack and he has to respond. And that's basically rock and roll. So I don't know if there's any other questions or anything anybody want to see in particular.
No, I'm just checking now, and let me just make. I don't think I missed anything. But if there's something else that by all means, I'll leave that. If there's something else you wanted to show,
well, we can go slow. I'll show you some of the flow drill, the Serrata.
Sure.
Okay. So Serrata basically is Serrata means shadowing, right? So all we're doing is we're going 1 for 1, right? I feed him, he checks. So it's a constant back and forth. So I'm looking for originally the basic drill. Then we start changing the feeds, right? So it becomes more live. And then you find the disarms and everything else. So
hey, Guro, we did get a request.
It gives you the ability to start feeling where your opponent is changing their attacks, changing their intensity, and not really doing a set pattern once you get more well versed at it.
Guro, oh yeah, I did get requested.
And the hitting, right? It shouldn't be. I see a lot of people do Serrata this way.
All right, I'll get him.
Right? So see how I'm moving the stick, but there's no pressure. It's just like it's like patty cake. So this is patty cake. It's fast, but there's nothing happening to him. So I want to make sure that he's feeling me come in when I'm doing the drill. It's not just he's feeling me as I do the drill. So that's the basic Serrata.
I got a question for you. Guru Ryan is asking if you could show the pick.
The pick, sure. All right, so I teach. How I teach 3 basic picks for beginners. So the first pick I teach is off the 1. So I feed the 1, but then I do the 4. So that's the first pick. But I don't overcommit with the 1. That's the whole point with the picking is a lot of people they'll feed the 1 and then they'll do the 4. Let's see how it gives them time. So I let him see the 1 come, but that's where the 4 goes. So that's the first pick. The second pick is the 3 to the 1. So, and again, I don't let him get the defense on the 3, right? I feed the 3 and then hit the 1 right away. So here, that's too far. That's not a pick because he's intercepted my 3. Let him see the 3 coming and then change it to the 1 right away. So that's the second pick. The third pick I teach is the 2 to the 6, right? So I start to feed the 2, pull the body, and then deliver the 6. So those are 3 basic picks that I teach. So the first one is the 1 to the 4. The second is the 3 to the 1. And the third is the 2 to the 6. Those are the 3 basic picks that I show.
Okay, awesome. I do. Yeah, I like what you mentioned there, right? Because if you're making contact, you gave him recovery.
Right.
So that was awesome. Yeah. I'm just making sure I'm not missing I agree. People like to fight the stick and not each other. Okay, that was from Henry. Okay. Um, yeah, no, that was awesome. Because I know you're pressed for time, so I was because you gotta leave at 3 or the latest a little after 3, correct?
Yeah. So I got 10, 15 minutes. So
Okay. So, um, so what do you over here? Well, I got a couple closing questions, and then we can go. If you had if you had the time and desire, what would be another FMA system that you would like maybe perhaps to train in or experience?
huh.
So,
That's a good question.
I mean, no
I
hints.
like I like the speed and
Uh,
intensity of Serrata. So I
no
think that
hint.
Kali is no, hey, I have a lot of respect for KI.
I'm just kidding about.
And most of the people I've met that do it are very, very skilled.
I'm just kidding.
I look, I have a lot of friends that do Pakiti, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for Pakiti Tersha as a system because it covers all the ranges really well. It really is a complete martial arts system
Mm,
because it covers multiple weapons. It covers empty hand. It covers grappling. It covers locking. So Pakiti would be something, it's interesting. Like I said, had I known when I was 11
I know.
that
Had you
that's what I
known,
was
right?
studying, today I could be one of the senior guys doing
You'd
Pakiti
be
Tersha,
freaking. You'd be too on Tony.
right? But Balentawak too, like Tabota's lineage of Balentawak, I'm very impressed with those guys. San Miguel Eskrima, I like what I see with San Miguel.
Yeah, I did some with Tom Bizio, and it was pretty fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean but Tom Bizio falls into again in one of those categories where he's just a martial arts genius. He's one of those guys that he just has it.
It's just too
He
bad. He's
he just
not
clicks into whatever he
replaceable.
studies. I mean, he's an exceptional martial artist. Period. I
Yeah.
met him years ago in Saratoga, and as you know, he's a really good healer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he was doing body work, and I was on the table, and he's like, "Oh, you got a rib out?" I'm like, "Excuse me?" And he like did a bone adjustment and popped my rib back into place. I'm like, "Ah!" And I felt great after that. I'm like, "How the hell did he know I had a rib out?"
Yeah. He's just incredible. Like he really is. Much to what you
Yeah.
just said. Yeah.
And one of my martial arts friends who I've known many years, who in his own right is just a ridiculously skilled martial artist, is one of Bizio's students, Wes Tasker.
I know of him. Yeah.
Wes is one of those guys who, unless you know who he is, you don't know how skilled and knowledgeable Wes is.
Yeah. I heard nothing but
Wes
great
is
things.
in our like our era of practitioners. Wes is one of the top practitioners, not just in the Filipino arts, but in all arts. As a Chinese practitioner, he's really exceptionally skilled. So, so it's neat to have that, to see, like when I saw that I worked with people who trained in New York with Gahe at the time and worked with Bizio. And then I didn't even know who Tom Bizio was up until my probably mid 30s or early 30s. And then to find out Wes was starting to train with him too. It was pretty cool to see that connection.
Yeah. I heard nothing but great things about Wes. Yeah. Somebody
Yeah,
else.
Wes is a martial arts savant is the best way for me to best way for me to explain it.
Try to get him on these savants on. Wow. Ron Saturno has a question. How about the future? So I guess I'm gonna your future and the system future. So I guess how about the future?
So I would return that question to Guru Ron, right? Because Manong Ron is one of the guys who was an early on student of Manong Angel, and I'm sure he'll agree with me. The tough part is going to try to get all of the people who practice Serrata on the same page, working together, doing what's necessary to propagate the art so that Manong Angel's art doesn't die, rather than having infighting. And there's enough people like that get along in the Stockton area that have the lineage of Serrata that I think can do the right thing out here on the East Coast, because there's only a select few of us that are teaching the art.
Yeah.
We have to stay vigilant and continue to draw from and get the guidance from those guys like Manong Ron, Manong Carlito, my teacher, Bruce Judnick, Grandmaster Vincent Cabales,
Right.
these guys who were there. And if they want to see the art survive, they've got to share it with the next generation. So they're willing to not just pass it on, but are skilled enough to pass it on. And that's the key thing, is that you can teach the art to anybody, but who's really going to get the art and be a representative of the art that can propagate the art properly and do the art effectively,
Yeah. Do you talk to Nick Merchant much? Are you guys in
Yeah,
contact?
occasionally Nick and I are in contact. I mean, Nick and I only know each other because of our connection to Serrata, and we became Facebook friends, and but I've never met Nick face to face.
He's just a really great. He's one of my students in the system, but
I could tell he's a great guy.
No, absolutely. He is so open-minded and easy. Like, I think you two would really gel and hit it off if you guys were able to kind of connect and try to like grow something or get something going.
Sure.
Like, far as like a Cabales event. I can tell you right now, I would do everything I can to help promote it for you, put it on, do whatever. But I think you two would really hit it off working together.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I just want to beat the crap out of Kisman. And what amazes me about him is that, like, he just doesn't care, man. He went out there with his 24 stick. He just didn't freaking care, man. I don't care. I don't care, man. I'm going to go out with this thing. I'm going to impart what has been instilled in me as far as the system and methodology, and I'm going to see where it goes. Yep. You would really like him, man. Yeah,
I'm sure. Well, he's a New Yorker. I already like him.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and he's yeah. Like, where are you about? So, how far are you?
I'm like, 2.5, 3 hours north of Manhattan.
Oh wow, you're okay. So you're way up. Okay.
Yeah, Albany, New York it's a 2.5 hour drive to the city, but really to get to like Midtown or Lower Manhattan, it's 3 hours.
3 hours. Okay. So it's not. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. I mean, yeah.
Oh no, not at all.
Yeah.
In fact, I have people that come up and train with me.
Yeah. Right. So
from that area.
Okay. Yeah. Because I'm gonna be talking to him soon. I'm gonna mention your name, and it'd be really neat if you two. Yeah, you guys got something going in the city or something, like just a big Cabales event. You two leading up. You know what I mean? I think.
Yep.
I think man, that would be awesome. What as far as our community goes, I always like to ask people this that I think are care for the community, or I just get a really good vibe from them, like you. What positive changes would you like to see over on our community? Like some that the negatives to the positives. What would you like to see?
We've both been in the martial arts world for a while, I'm sure, Dean. And one thing that I notice, there's open talk and there's behind doors talk, right? And a lot of people poo-poo on other martial arts systems, especially in the FMA community. The big thing is like, oh, well, their art's not effective, or it's not combat, or those guys don't fight their art enough. And rather than saying that, more people should find a resolution to try to get people like, hey, do you guys like the sparring thing comes big with a lot of people. It's like, hey, do you guys spar? And if they don't really spar, be like, well, why don't you spar? And as well as I do, like guys like Paulo Rubio does a good job of this, gets out there and basically calls people out. It's like, are you sparring? If you're not sparring, you're not doing this. Why aren't you doing that? So you need to be clear if you're practicing an art. I practice the art for the sake of the art. I don't really care about it going out and being able to go on the street and beat anybody up with it, or beat other FMA guys up. You want to, you're doing like a preservation. And I respect that if somebody tells me that's what they're doing. Yeah. But if somebody tells me that they have the most complete combative applicable FMA system, they need to be able to show that they can do that. And we also have to keep things in mind as far as the reality of what full contact fighting is, right? So the the big problem with people is like they'll say, well, we do full contact stick fighting, and it's like, okay, but are you doing full contact stick fighting with live weapons, like heavy weapons? And you can't, obviously, because the matches won't last long and the people will be in the hospital. But there's a lot of mistakes that people make when they do full contact fighting, where they'll get hit by a strike that will do a lot more damage in reality, but because it's a piece of rattan, it doesn't have the same impact. And if you're wearing a fencing mask, right, taking a shot across the face full force with a rattan stick is going to hurt a lot more if you don't have a mask on. So people can continue fighting, but you have to recognize what strike really caused a blow that would make a big difference in a fight.
Right. Yeah.
You know, but then you also can't come from a line that's practicing an art that never does fighting and makes up the BS excuse, like, oh, well, our art is too deadly.
Too deadly. Yeah.
It's like, well, how do you know? You know, and you can't just ride on the coattails of people like Manong Angel, who got into death matches in the Philippines, right? He fought life and death matches. So you can't just say, well, because my teacher fought a life and death match, my art is a deadly, well, all arts are deadly martial arts. It's the practitioners that screw them up, right? Yeah. So you can't poo-poo on Taekwondo, because if you get kicked full force by a Taekwondo kicker in the head, it's going to hurt and probably put you out.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you can't put them down. Best kickers.
It's practitioners that do the disservice to the art. The arts themselves are beautiful, and that's what people need to really start to recognize. If we want to bring arts like Serrata and the Stockton-based martial arts together, we need to get them out there. We need people to be on the same page, and we need to understand that most martial artists have a lot more in common than they don't. Absolutely. And infighting and bickering is what kind of drives the wedge, and we need to start to eliminate that.
It's funny because this does come up a lot. Unfortunately, our community is our own worst enemy. It really is. I mean, and this is why we're behind. Like, if you look at our business model, it absolutely, generally speaking, it's nowhere like the Taekwondo model as far as business. You look at our infrastructure I mean, there's a ton of stuff that we could do better as a community. I do think there's been improvement with COVID and the cross-pollination of training via Zoom. I think I absolutely have seen improvement. I've seen groups talk to one another that normally probably wouldn't, because there would be no reason to. But much to your point, like, to me, I look at it as from the practitioner point of view. Like, do what makes you happy. Like, if you like the competitiveness, or you like to experience failures or see where your stuff rates against other stuff, man, great, go do it. If you like the fact that it just got you off the couch, you're no longer depressed, you're doing the art, it's getting you moving, you're trying to tell me that's more important than the person that's dealing with a fear issue, so they enter sparring. To me, it's like the individual journey, like what drives you, what motivates you, what speaks to you. And if that's what makes you happy, who the hell is anybody to say what you should or shouldn't do? You know what I mean? I just, but much to your point, if the instructor is boasting about their system, and this system can compete against any structure or module and this, and they haven't tested, well, then that's a problem.
Right. Then it's all theory, right?
Yeah.
And theory, unless tested, is not application.
Yeah. So, right. And it's just a lot of,
So, but I mean, I could say to you very easily, like, I saw a post recently on your page by John Border talking about people saying, well, rattan is not a weapon that people use in the Philippines. They use hardwood. And I go, okay, well, what if you sharpen a point on the end of that rattan? Is it a weapon now?
And people are getting dropped with rattan.
Right.
They're getting dropped. Hands are getting broken.
Right.
People are getting dropped with rattan.
And obviously, getting hit by a piece of oak hurts a lot more than getting hit by a piece of rattan. But my point is, when someone says, oh, well, rattan is not a weapon that you fight with, it's a sparring weapon. It's like, if you whittle a sharp point at the end of that rattan stick, now it's a weapon.
There you go.
that'll pierce the skin.
Oh,
So it's all semantics, you know.
I know, and some people they just gotta, you know.
Yep, they just want to create false arguments to make themselves seem.
I know, and that's where like I've there's been a learn curve with me because sometimes I would get involved, and now I'm really trying to like sometimes I'll comment, but I won't keep going because otherwise, man, you're drowning yourself. Like you're just getting in this mix of arguing with people that you don't even know who they are. You know, other
Right.
side of a continent, and it's just, and I've been guilty. Now I really try to be careful of that. Like, just is this time well spent? And of course, the answer is no. You know?
Right. I don't even engage anymore when people
Well,
make.
you're smart. I mean, and keep doing what you're doing because me sometimes I lose sight of that, and yeah, but I'm getting better though. I'm learning curve. But Ron, when am I coming on? GM Ron, whenever you want. So you got the
Yeah,
green
I
light.
mean, like I'm. Well, I could talk with Nick about that, you know, because Nick had sent me a message about trying to have Manong Ron out and Manong Carlito and a bunch of guys from Stockton. I'm so booked personally for seminars.
Yeah.
Between my teachers already, from an economic standpoint, it isn't feasible for me to book any future seminars, at least for the next 2 years. But Nick had already mentioned something about that. I think it'd be great to get Guro Ron out here on the East Coast.
I'm going to form a group
represent Serrata
with you guys. I'm going to form a group.
What's that?
I'm going to form a group message with you and Nick when I get off here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll definitely, absolutely, and you guys get it. But somebody said here, great demos. Yeah, is Nate there? I want to thank him for obviously helping.
Yeah, Nate, come on up over here real quick.
How's it going, Dean? Good to see you.
Hey, thanks for helping him out. Those demos were awesome. Comments.
My pleasure, sir.
He keeps me on my toes.
Yeah, great demo.
Tim Hartman gave him a pet nickname, Mobblies, which means speedy, basically. So him and Hachi call him Mobblies because he always goes faster than you're supposed to go. I'll be like, all right, let's do this slow.
Okay.
And I'll feed him, and all of a sudden he's like going light speed. I'm like, okay, Nate.
Slow it down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nate makes me look good. So if the demo was good, it's because Nate makes me look good. And I always tell people, one thing that I say that I got from one of my teachers who was a Filipino arts teacher and kosher teacher, one of Hachi's senior guys, he used to say, if you like what I do and you appreciate what I do, pay respect to my teachers. Thank my teachers for that. Mm-hmm. If you don't like what I do, that's my fault. I was a poor misrepresentation poor representation of the art. So anybody out there watching me do Serrata, if you're like, oh, that doesn't look like that's no good, especially some of the senior guys like Manong Ron, because when I know those eyes are watching, there's definitely like a little bit of nerves because they're the real deal guys. So if you don't like what I'm doing, don't put that on Hachi Judnick. That's all on me.
I'm sure everybody was really comments or so, but awesome. I don't want to keep because I know you, but I really appreciate you coming on. This was awesome.
No, thank you, Dean. I don't normally do things like this, and like I said, because I'm kind of an under the leaves kind of guy. But when you mentioned it, when we first hooked up on Facebook, and I talked to a couple of my guys, like, yeah, you got to do it, man. It's nobody knows who you are, and blah blah blah. And
see, it wasn't that bad, right? See?
No, well, and it's good too because I get to mention other people that I know that should be recognized as well, and my teacher in particular, Hachi Bruce Judnick was a pioneer of Filipino martial arts that people don't know.
I know. We gotta get him on. I know. I just hope he does, man. Are you on Symposium this year?
Yes, I'll be there.
Well, that'd be nice. We could finally me and you could maybe sit and chat. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I'd like that.
Yeah. But this has been. We just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. But nice to know more of you, Anthony. That was from Kara. That was okay.
Cool.
Yeah, comments are fantastic coming in.
So we'll let the people know. I can't see Facebook, so I can't see any questions or comments. But I'll try to. If I see anything when I log on later, I'll see if I can answer stuff.
Yeah. Matter of fact, because they'll still be there. It'll be on my wall. So I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna download it, and I put it to YouTube, and of course I'll share the link of the download with you. So
Very cool.
yeah. Well, hey, I'll let you get going, but thank you so much again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity for me to speak on behalf of my teachers and on behalf of Serrata Eskrima. And I hope to see more people showing interest in the Stockton-based FMA community, especially Serrata Eskrima, and avoid the politics like I have.
Yes, key.
So, Dean, keep doing what you're doing. I think you're doing good for the Filipino martial arts community. And again, I appreciate everything that you've done to help facilitate this. So,
Yeah.
I look forward to actually meeting you in person someday.
Sounds good. All right. Well, you take care.
You too, man. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Ooh. All right. That wraps up. That was a good episode. Kind of short but sweet. Short on the shorter end, I should say. Usually ours go more hour and a half and more. So, but Christmas raffle tomorrow night, running at 5:00 in the group. Still time to buy tickets. All the proceeds are going to children in need and Arlen Sanford. So we're going to kind of split the money there. Thus far, I think we are at the 500 mark. So again, $10 a ticket and going for a great cause. So if you can do it, much appreciated. Who is next? Sunday night's test run for Monday's episode could be a really good one, I think. GM Yuli and GM Renee Thompson talking about the tournament days. So when GM Yuli used to bring his team in the tournament days in Manila, GM Renee not only ref, but kind of also was very instrumental in the first stick design for those tournaments. So they're going to come on together. So I think that's going to be a really, really good episode. And that's going to be Monday night at 8 p.m. So if you're not doing anything, you want to check that out. It's going to be very interesting. Kind of two of my favorite GMs, actually. GM Renee and Yuli. Both very special people. So yeah, check that out. And again, that raffle, $10. It's going to great cause. You're helping children or Arlen Sanford for his recovery post-surgery. All right, I will see you folks next time.